Yes, to do that episode.
Yeah.
We did the star sign episode before, so.
Oh yeah, but last week
we
I
did.
was telling you I couldn't do it.
No, that was another one. That was a Cantopop one.
That was
yeah.
a Candle Pop one.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Have you not watched it?
My homework.
Yes.
That's like the link.
I love to binge watch, so I'm just
Oh.
waiting for all the
That's
episodes
another
to come
binge
out.
watching
Yeah.
episode.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Happy Hour. So today we're gonna do a slightly different format. So it's gonna be a Q&A session for the eternal struggle of job hunting, which is a topic that's very close to my heart, as is I'm sure everyone else who's trying to survive can relate. And apart from our usual hosts, Wing and Jose, we also have Carmen, today's special guest. So Carmen, do you want to sort of introduce yourself?
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Carmen, and I've been working with LinkedIn for the last few years, helping a lot of companies do recruitment and to really transition their recruitment strategy onto the digital world. So thank you for having me today.
Yes, thank you for coming. So yeah, let's start with the first question. How can I network during COVID-19? Right, so I got a lot of questions, I think, from my friends who are job hunting as well, especially during the pandemic, because companies are cutting costs, right? And also, I think from the maybe people who are trying to, like maybe startups who are trying to get like more freelancers to work for them, or even just already well-established companies who are trying to get more sort of business. So yeah, do you guys have any, like, what were your experiences with networking during the pandemic so far?
There's a lot of companies out there that are doing webinars, and they're starting to transition the way that they approach either candidates or otherwise their customers online. And so as part of this transition, they're starting to really touch consumers on a scalable basis using webinar style.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I encourage people to do is really look for these opportunities to join. But at the end of it, try to connect with the host. Try to connect with the people who are organizing it. So just beyond having a presence online or really participating, but be an active participant. And then use the opportunity to connect with people that are organizing these events. And so that will help you build out a little bit in terms of your network with relevant people, right? But the other thing is, in working for LinkedIn, and I truly believe in the platform and the power of our network, is to really leverage LinkedIn to help you. Make sure you have a very comprehensive profile. Make sure you use our function to network and actually connect with your peers, connect with people, organization leaders, and just say hi. There's no harm in sending a quick message and saying hi. This is I found you on LinkedIn. Why am I looking to connect with you? Would you have some time to maybe just share your expertise or share your advice? And oftentimes I see that working. So maybe that's one way to really transition your networking onto a digital world.
Yeah.
And I echo that because not only from a job hunting perspective, for example, if you sit in the seat of the employer, they actually have more time being digitally connected now, because they can't obviously go out, look for talent or even look for business. So definitely, like Carmen mentioned, if you send me, for example, a message on LinkedIn, I'm actually more likely to reply now, even if it's a kind of cold call style note, because I'm just so used to getting them now. More and more people are doing that compared to obviously before, just because everyone is forced into the same situation. So I think it's, don't have fear, because I think even from an employer's perspective, they're trying to get their hands on how to connect digitally as well. So it's kind of like a learning process for everyone. So definitely be more proactive there, and I think that the chances are you probably get a decent response if you again present yourself the right way to start with.
I think at the same time, as job hunters, you might also want to take this opportunity to consider upskilling yourself. Because I think, especially after this pandemic, think a lot of companies would change their strategies in terms of hiring and what skills can you bring to the employer. There are a lot of online courses available, and a lot of times these online courses would actually provide opportunities for you to meet people, say through group projects, and that's another way to find like a support group to sort of share your strategies on how to look for job opportunities online, etc. around the world. So that's a very good opportunity as well.
Yeah, I think connecting with people through events or online courses is actually very important. For example, from experience, I did a session where I was talking in front of the screen, like a Zoom conferencing a seminar. And when someone has to speak to a screen for 1.5 hours, it's actually very, very tough. It's much harder than just speaking the same time to a live audience, because
there's no feedback.
There's hardly any. You can't sense the non-verbal feedback, so that means the verbal feedback. Like I was actually quite grateful that halfway between people would ask questions. It allows me to kind of, have a glass of water. And, so it's kind of quite important if you empathize with the person actually, giving the talk. They actually would, I think, really appreciate questions. So all the more reason to be more proactive in this way, because there's no non-verbal cues, so you just have to rely a lot more on the verbal ones. No, I think it also just to another point is it actually gives you more opportunity to network with people that aren't in the same location as you. Again, because more people are open to talking. Once you get used to it, you're like, it's totally fine if I'm talking to someone, say from London, which where I was yesterday, and it just felt so natural. Like it's just like, there's the link, you click in, you talk, and I know it's always been there, the technology, but it's the habit. So feel free to reach out to people that's beyond your geographic as well.
Question 2. Even at entry level, job listings always seem to require years of pre-existing job experience. Where do I start as a fresh graduate? So my friend who asked me this, one of my friends who asked me this question, they sent me a meme, but it basically says like, there's this double standard where, they say, we're looking for, hungry young talent, but at the same time we want like 3 years of experience. We see that a lot of the times, either like through LinkedIn or just any sort of like official-ish job postings.
I know which one you mean. The one that's like, you want to get a job and they say you need experience, but you're saying if I don't get a job, how can I get experience?
Exactly. Yes.
Right,
It's a chicken and an egg.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
When I work with a lot of organizations, what I've been seeing in the last few years is companies are starting to move away from this sort of, I need some pre-existing experience, onto actually skill sets. And the reality is, a lot of times the skills that we need for jobs of today will actually be obsolete by 5 years from now. And so being able to continuously learn new skills and to adapt to various technologies that come along, it's very important. And I think as someone with entry level or limited experience, one of the things you help yourself stand out is by showcasing the type of skills that you have relative to the jobs that you want. And being able to demonstrate that, and being able to demonstrate how you've acquired these skills and your proactiveness and willingness to learn will help you stand out. And the other thing is, oftentimes you see all these job descriptions, we need 5 years of experience and 3 years of experience. Even if you don't have 100% of that, do not think you're not qualified for the job. I really genuinely believe, obviously you may not have that experience, but if you reach out to that person and say, look, I see this job description, I am incredibly interested, I do have all of these skill sets, but not necessarily in the experience of a job, I would love to still have an opportunity to have that discussion. And oftentimes you'll see, okay, yeah, sure, why not? At least we can have a chat. So being proactive and really trying to demonstrate beyond job how you are able to have these skills that are important. Volunteering experience is another way to really showcase that. Because whilst you're not getting paid for the job, that you're doing, you're still having these experience to hone in on certain skill sets that you may need. So there's a few ways to demonstrate your skills and your capability. You just have to be creative around how you do it.
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of more kind of examples of how you would see someone demonstrating that they're willing to continuously learn and try? Like, do you have any? Have you come across any specific examples that you thought that's a pretty nice way to do it?
I see people with like certification. So again, going back to LinkedIn because that's my bread and butter. It's really showcasing, you know, in your profile you can definitely share the skills that you've acquired. You can, you know, link it with, for example, LinkedIn Learning or other platforms, and where you've completed a course and you want to have, you have a certification, you can put that in. And over the course of your career journey, whether you're starting out or you're, you know, midway through, you can still demonstrate that path of self-learning. I think that self-directed learning is incredibly important.
Show that you have initiatives, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when they talk about like the job posting require you a certain number of like years of experience, I think they just want to make sure that you know how you conduct yourself in an office setting. Like they don't want to hire somebody who's like a baby who needs to like hold your hands and do this and that, right? You just, I think, you need to show that you know you can demonstrate that you have some.
So more like the conduct and etiquettes and kind of
like how you deal with external and internal parties, etc.
Yeah.
These are so critical.
Yeah.
It's that emotional intelligence. It's almost that soft skills that will help you be more successful.
Yeah. And sometimes that's why I think you touched on the soft skills and the EQ, but I think the connectivity. So the whole interview is really about, you know, or even reading the resume is about you connecting with the candidate. So one of the reasons why these kind of like self-directed learning and things might, another side of it is that I cannot connect with you because it's a bit far-fetched. Like I've been, you know, I graduated 15 years ago or whatever. So I'm, you know, looking at a graduate and I'm like, I really want to, I have a bond, but I'm like, okay, I don't know what this course is maybe. But then I see something that you did a certification, say on digital marketing, and I'm like, okay, I did that a few years ago. So, you know, then at least during the interview, if you get there, you have something, you know, a common ground. So it just increases your chance of having a common ground and connecting with the person. And you be more comfortable talking about something that you obviously been through yourself as well. So.
So I guess also from like the candidate side, it is a two-way. It's not just like one-sided, right? This is job hunting process. So, like, it's also partly the employer's responsibility to see that potential in the candidate rather than just like blindly looking at, you know, the quantitative experience that they've accumulated through their CV. Because I've also,
I know what you mean. It's just like you cannot just use one template or one CV for all the jobs, right? It's about market positioning, how you cater yourself towards like the potential job opening.
And it's very easy to tell if you go through enough of them, like your first line, like especially the cover letter, but even the resume, I know people put an effort because I can see the keywords tailoring to my job description. And I would more likely give them a chance even if they have less experience, just because they took the time to you know, just to tailor it towards our conversation. So I think that's like, for example, if I was hiring someone who's going to help me deal with, you know, partners or clients, like that would be the type of person I want that, you know, tailors, customizes that conversation for them. So, you know, that's a good first sign.
And also I think relating to that point, I did get like a sort of another sub question that comes under that. Like, so when larger companies hire in batches, cohorts, like, you know, they go through several rounds, how can my friend asked, like, how can I stand out as a fresh graduate during the process?
I think a few things. I think one is do your research. When you have an opportunity to be in front of the employer, make sure you've done your research to really articulate why this company, why this job. And I think if you're really authentic about how that connects back to your passion or connects back to, you know, what's your mission, your own mission and your own vision for your career. I think there is a lot of authenticity to that. That also kind of lets the employers know that you have a lot of drive.
Yeah.
And so that's one. Second thing around research is really trying to figure out if this is the company that you're interested to work for. Who else did you know that worked with this company? Because the reality is, human connection and referrals are still one of the most effective way to finding a job. So rather than be asking around and go, hey, you know, I would love to work for this company. Do I know anyone? Trying to figure out who you know, and then perhaps asking for either a referral, or if you're not comfortable to ask for a referral, ask advice from that person. Like, how do you know, what is this company looking for? What are the characteristics, right? And then really try to think, do I match with this? And so that's another way of doing it. I think just being very proactive. Overall, it's going to get you much further to get you noticed.
Yeah. I think I definitely resonate with especially being authentic and asking around for referrals, because I think back in university, like, that was also sort of the advice that I got from like my mother and just like, you know, other more experienced people. And but I think like I still hesitated quite a lot, because I had this just concept at the back of my head that sort of networking was sort of like a manipulative process, and to me that just like, it hit me a bit on my like guilty conscience. But I think like another friend's sort of helped reframe that concept is that like, actually you're also like, don't underestimate how many people out there are actually willing to help, you know. Because from their side, if they already sort of know you a bit, then it actually makes you a more reliable candidate, right? So for them, it's also quite helpful to know, and like, don't need to do as much background check, or there's less of a fear element in hiring as well. So yeah.
Yep. But definitely. So yeah, I think to the question, I think, you know, Carmen covered the kind of like pre-interview stage, right, on the research and stuff. If you go into like, you know, talking about the cohort, like group assessments, they're usually quite, you know, they're conducted on the basis that they want to test how you interact with each other. There's elements of that. So generally, I would say before that, there should be usually an interview before that, which where you maybe an HR person or maybe your line manager. From that, by the time you obviously get through that, you've satisfied certain conditions. So what I would say is like, understand the culture of the company and you know, how they conduct their business through the first round, because you actually met an employee, and then during the second round you can, you know, at least you understand what the standards are. So I think it's kind of like there's a pre-interview, and then during the interview I think you try to mirror as much as possible, you know, what are the, you know, the codes of conduct. Are people like, when you walked in, did they give you a sense that they were very more like proactive or aggressive, or was it more like listening, passive? Generally in those exercises, don't be the one who don't say anything, and don't be the one who dominates the conversation. Like if you're somewhere in between, you're kind of you play the safe card, right? Listen to people and try to build on other people's points. And I think that's generally the way I would approach that. And then finally, I think this final step is, which I think increasingly now as an employer now is more and more important, is the follow-up, kind of like the post-interview or the post-section, just a nice note to kind of bring out anything that happened during the day or the conversation. Oh, I really enjoyed this part. And be genuine about it. I mean, you can tell if someone's just saying it for the sake of saying it, but you know, just bring out, you know, especially if it's a one-on-one. Like do say, oh, that was a really interesting part. You don't have to make it like really long, but it's just a nice. It does make I think it does make a difference. If I read something like that, you know, maybe just during the evening after I saw that person, it does reinforce an impression, especially if there were like a lot of people I met that day. Like, because it kind of forces me to be like, who is you know, like, so,
and highlight
who did I meet?
And highlight one or two things that you think the interviewer was like impressed by what you said, just to like refresh his or her.
Okay, bring out your
yeah,
own, yeah.
Yeah, in the follow up.
I mean, to your point, it's empathy on both sides. It's like, you know, the candidate, if they can try and understand what it is to judge, you know, different people, like assess different people, because it is a very different experience of being judged or being assessed. And obviously for the interviewer, you're right. Sometimes I think it is on the employers to, I mean, come and like have experience in this sort of stuff, but how do you identify talent and potential? Sometimes some people just aren't as, I mean, you can't identify talent just from that 1 hour. I think sometimes you have to look beyond that. So, that's
Okay, and then third question, quite specific to Hong Kong. As a non-Chinese speaking immigrant, how can I break into the Hong Kong job market when most employers seem to prefer fluency in Chinese?
That's a tough one.
That's a tough
I've been
one.
looking at this one for a few
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely felt this frustration for, I think, at least, like, literally more than a year after I graduated, like, from London. So after coming back, the thing is, like, I've been in London most of my life, and, like, unfortunately, I didn't have many opportunities to maintain my Chinese skills. So yeah, when I came back, it really hit me hard that despite the fact that they advertised their job as, oh, we're looking for someone who could write in English, and then like at the bottom I did see, oh, Chinese proficiency is also preferred but not a requirement, right? But then you know you go apply and there's always going to be another candidate who has who's bilingual or trilingual. So technically I could try to brush up my Chinese, and I have definitely tried, and so have my other friends who were in a similar position as me, but we just, unfortunately, Chinese is a very language to pick back up again, so I think yeah, I'm not sure. What are your thoughts about that?
You know, of all the friends, so I almost a decade ago, I did telling my age here. So I did an MBA program, and in the MBA program there's tons of different people, and a lot of them don't speak Cantonese. And of those that decided to stay in Hong Kong, they all were able to find really amazing jobs that whilst they didn't have the Cantonese language or Mandarin language, it is absolutely possible. I think one is being patient, but the other thing is really try to figure out with an open mind, like what is your passion, what do you want to do, but beyond just a single job description, maybe think about other things that are relatable, so you kind of open your range of the type of roles that you can potentially want to go into. So that, I think that's number one, give yourself more options and more alternatives. Number two, like you've mentioned, really just as you are going through the process, learn as much as possible, practice as much as possible, and even during your interview process, don't be afraid to share what you know. It may not be perfect, but I think the interviewers or the employers genuinely
the progress.
Yeah, the progress and the
Yeah.
authenticity, and that you're willing to learn and that you're not shy about it. I think that's quite endearing, to be honest. I think that's quite endearing. You know, to be in a market, any market in the world where you don't speak the local language is going to have its challenges and difficulties. The only thing is just don't give up. Like really just continue and trying to find.
Like I felt like you shouldn't feel discouraged because of like a lack of Chinese skills, because I know a lot of people who speak Cantonese too, but then it's not the same when you're like in an office, like, you know, the business Chinese, like, so like for everybody they would have to learn a new set of language too when it comes to like business communication. So like don't feel discouraged as long as you feel that you're competent or you are like you can communicate your ideas. I think it's for everybody too, is a learning process.
I think definitely is the realization that it's gonna be more difficult, but it's possible. Like those are very, you need to have that belief in mind, and then as an extension of that, you know, back to what we said in the, you know, maybe the first question, like when you network, like say you're in Hong Kong and you you're an expat, if you network with obviously other expats who are more seniors, well, they made it there, right? So there must be a way, and those are probably the people that are going to be able to help you along the way, because they will know the right people who are hiring, not necessarily Chinese speakers. So I think that is definitely something that you probably need to even put more effort in compared to somewhere if you're just at least language is not a problem. I think the best way personally, because I had this problem when I came back to Hong Kong a decade ago. Exactly a decade ago in 2010, and because I was interviewing for finance, like corporate investment banking jobs, and all of them needed English, Mandarin, and Cantonese pretty much. And my Mandarin just wasn't up to scratch then. So I did actually make the decision. I eventually got a job because my the boss who hired me was actually it was a US bank, so he came from New York. So eventually that was actually wasn't through networking, it was literally just through an interview process. So it was lucky, but then I still decided to quit that job after a year and go to Shanghai to do an MBA, just because I knew I only needed a year to get. I felt like to get to the level that I needed, even for a business kind of conversation. It was hard. Again, that was hard too. But I think I felt so much better afterwards because I've never had that blind spot anymore. So I just go in and I'm just like, okay, we just
very brave.
Let's just go. So I think I would have felt more uncomfortable if I stayed where I was. But that's my choice. So
I actually have a question for Carmen. Well, I noticed a lot of people would want to, in order to brush up their Chinese, they would do like a Chinese language course or exchange in China. Do employers actually think that that's a plus, or they're just like thinking that they're wasting their time?
I think it's a plus. I think it demonstrates that you're willing to really put a lot of effort into honing a particular skill that you think it's important. I think over the course of career journey, it used to be that if you have a gap in your employment, that doesn't look good. But I think increasingly employers and just people in general understand that in the overall work journey that you'll have over the course of many years, there will be times when you need a gap for either personal reasons or for professional reasons or for upskilling reasons. And I think as long as you can demonstrate to your employers or your potential interviewers why and how does that fit into the skills that they need for the job, for you to be able to do, I think it's absolutely okay. Yeah.
Okay, so question 4. What qualities do millennials and Gen Z look for in an employer? We got this question from someone who's looking to recruit, and I think especially this sort of thing changes through generations, but I think now compared to just before, I think more people are looking for employers who value passion and also have a strong sense of morality. So increasingly, even back in university, I've heard a lot of people promoting looking for applying to startups because that's where they value the process more than the money. I think also an employer who recognizes and values work-life balance. That's a very strong factor.
Now more than ever, work-life balance to me is incredibly important. Flexibility is very important. And I think because of COVID, companies have started to pivot towards a more flexible way of working. They ultimately were forced to really go digital in terms of allowing their employees to all work from home, having a technology that enabled it. And so there is a much better sense of flexibility in that sense. I look for a company with a culture that allows me to be independent, and to be able to allow me to exercise some of my own creativities and how I want to work. So I think that's increasingly more important to me. And I don't know, what do you guys think? I mean, does that resonate?
Definitely. When I first started my career, probably like money was a big thing,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's like your entry point,
Yeah.
and that's like how you work your way up. But then like as time goes by, I kind of realize like you need to figure out what values you really want to hold on to.
For job satisfaction, right?
Yeah, and then you want to see whether the company values these values as well. If like it's a mismatch, then you will always be like, you know, like for example, like I think integrity is very important. And if I'm working for a company that doesn't really value that, then I will always be, you know, struggling to be happy. Yeah.
That's also a learning process for yourself, right? Because
Yes.
you're learning what is important for you.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
when you're just starting out in your career, you may think one thing is most important, maybe at that moment is money.
Yeah.
But as you kind of gain more experiences and you start to deal with more people and things start to surface,
Yeah.
and then values become so important because that will drive how happy you are and how productive you can be in your workplace.
Yeah.
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 And I
Some
think-
good productivity too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that that resonates with me a lot.
There's a lot of trial and error along the way probably.
Yeah.
And then you realize like where's your happy spot.
I would say that ultimately, for myself anyway, that it does come back to the more personal values rather than like how other people perceive it. So you do get a change. So because like when you're in a new job, even if you might not, you know, your values might not be aligned, it might not be the best job for you. There's just so many new things. So new, like freshness, a fresh environment is always motivating. Like even though maybe that environment might not be for you in the long run. So you kind of go through the process, you get really fired up. And then for me, I always feel like after like a certain period of time, I'm like, okay, actually, I you know, the fresh, you know, all that fresh stuff is gone, and I just feel very, you know, there's the negative feeling about it. So I think it's a journey. So not only is it to learn about yourself, but it's just the natural journey of you getting bored of, you know, the bells and whistles, and then you see right to the core what you really want. So yeah, I think same as what you were.
So that's why you got into startups, huh? Because you're constantly fresh.
I was I probably would consider myself as a more extreme case compared to my peers, because I really value independence, doing things the way I like to do it. I think that's what I discovered the most. So a lot of people say, oh, you leave a corporate to join or to start something because of a vision or a passion. Yes, but it's also the way you reach that goal. I think for me that's important, the process. Like, say I can join, otherwise I could have just joined a company which has, you know, was going for that same goal, because they will give me much more support and structure. But I like to start things from fresh. So in my way, building my own team. So definitely. But you know, having said that, if I didn't go through, as Carmen said, that process of, you know, those 10 years, I might not be running the business like I am doing now. So it's all part of like a learning experience. But back to the question, I think employers, I think regardless of the generation, they have to provide the basic needs. So you're right, the money, maybe some sort of a small degree of social status, a secure environment, and values. So I think those 4 things would be, if I had to just come off the top of my head, would be the most.
That's pretty foundational. And then on top of that is all the extra stuff that makes you much more special and coveted in terms of as an employer.
Yeah, I think those are the core. But some things change. Like I would agree that I don't know if work-life balance was that much of a topic back in when, well, at least in my circle, it wasn't really much of a work-life balance.
Depends on the industry.
Yeah, maybe
It depends on
yeah,
industry,
depends
yeah.
on- but then the thing is, I don't think we went into that life looking for work-life balance.
No, yeah,
So,
definitely not. I don't think so. Yeah.
So now it's important, obviously, if you have families and stuff. So.
Yeah.